It's Christmas Eve here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Starting with the full resumption of diplomatic and security events between South Korea and the U.S. Senior diplomats of Seoul and Washington agreed to entirely resume bilateral diplomatic and security schedules that were postponed due to the turmoil that resulted from the martial law order. The two sides also agreed to further tighten the allies' combined defense posture against any North Korean provocation. President Yoon Suk Yeol continues to refuse to accept notices to appear for questioning requested by the Special Investigation Team, while the Constitutional Court says the first preliminary hearing on Yoon's impeachment trial will take place as planned this Friday, despite his persistent refusal to accept court papers. According to the Kremlin, the North Korean military may take part in Russia's 80th Victory Day celebrations next year. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says over 3,000 North Korean soldiers have either died or been injured while fighting alongside Russian forces. Senior diplomats of Seoul and Washington met up in the U.S. for the first time since the declaration of martial law. There, the two sides agreed to pick up their diplomatic and security agendas that were put on hold due to the order. Our Paeunji starts us off.
First Vice Foreign Minister Kim Hong-kyun met with his American counterpart Kurt Campbell as South Korea works to put relations with the United States back on track amid political turmoil following the brief imposition of martial law earlier this month. This is the first time that a high-level meeting has taken place between the two countries since President Yoon Suk Yeol declared martial law on December 3rd. Kim reassured the United States that governance under the acting president is operating stably in South Korea and showed hopes on strengthening bilateral relations as well as a trilateral partnership with Japan.
ROC U.S.-Japan trilateral cooperation, building upon the achievements we have made so far, not only for the remainder of the Biden administration, but during the upcoming new U.S. administration.
Campbell, who said he wishes South Korea well in a challenging period, said they're seeking to underscore their strongest possible commitment.
Our expectation is that the critical mechanisms in the U.S.-RK relationship will remain in place, and we believe that a meeting schedule is important.
Following their meetings, Seoul's foreign ministry said on Tuesday that the two sides agreed to fully resume diplomatic and security events that have been put off and hold them at the earliest possible and mutually convenient time. Earlier this month, the two countries postponed a session of the Nuclear Consultative Group, which is their key nuclear deterrence body. But with only about a month left until U.S. President-elect Donald Trump takes office, concerns remain as to whether South Korea will be able to handle issues such as the cost sharing for American troops in South Korea. Trump had demanded a five-fold increase in Seoul's contribution during his first term, and recently tapped Elbridge Colby as Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, who had previously argued that South Korea must defend itself, and that it should consider independently developing nuclear weapons to deter the North, further raising concerns within Korea. Paeunji, Arirang News.
In the meantime, the planned questioning of President Yoon Suk Yeol this week remains unclear, as his office reportedly refused to comply with the second summons requested by the investigation team. Our Kim Jong-sil reports.
The Special Investigative Team, including police and the Corruption Investigation Office for High-Ranking Officials, or the CIO, revealed on Monday that Yoon's office continues to refuse to accept notices to appear for questioning. This follows earlier refusals of similar requests, casting doubts on whether the investigation can proceed. Notices sent to Yoon's office and residence have been either rejected or left unopened. The team had requested his appearance on Christmas Day to address allegations linking him to the orchestration of the December 3rd martial law crisis, where he's accused of leading efforts to seize authority, sparking concerns over legal defiance. Legal experts say this refusal to cooperate could have significant consequences.
The way he's refusing to take delivery of these notices, refusing to attend either the prosecution or the CIO to answer questions and essentially refusing to cooperate with the investigation in and of itself can constitute grounds for impeachment.
Adding to the tension, investigators are analyzing Yoon's personal phone records separate from his secure government line. Investigators are also looking into 7 figures, including former Defense Intelligence Command Chief No Sang-won and current Chief Moon Sang-ho, over so-called hamburger meetings, covert gatherings at a fast food restaurant where they allegedly discussed the details of martial law. A notebook seized from No apparently outlines troop deployments and plans to provoke a North Korean attack near the northern limit line, intensifying suspicions of his leading martial law efforts despite his civilian status. Meanwhile, Yoon's legal team argues that impeachment should take precedence over criminal investigations, citing former President Park Geun-hye's case. Critics, however, question whether this stance is a deliberate attempt to avoid accountability as a sitting president with suspended powers. Kim Jung-sil, Arirang News.
And the Constitutional Court has announced it will deem its legal documents delivered to President Yoon Suk Yeol despite Yoon's refusal to receive court papers, meaning the first hearings for Friday will proceed as planned. Let's discuss more with Professor Pinok this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
So Yoon will now be considered to have been served necessary documents related to his trial, regardless of whether he received them. Now, why do you think the court made such a call yesterday?
I think the court has decided to move the case forward without undue delay in the face of President Yoon's repeated refusal to receive any notices and documents from the court. I think the Chief Justice of the Constitutional Court made it very clear from the very outset of this case that the court will move, quote, swiftly and fairly. And I think this decision on service reflects the court's intent.
The court also said it will hold the first preparatory hearing in Yoon's impeachment trial this Friday that is planned. That also has to do with the urgency of the case, right?
Certainly. Given what is at stake in this case, once again, the court wants to move swiftly and fairly in this case. Apparently, the decision to apply the service by mail in this case was decided on the same date, which was last Thursday on the 19th, when the court fixed the date for the first pretrial hearing, which is to take place on Friday, the 27th.
Right.
So basically, the court decides to stick with the initial scheduling.
Well, the big next big day is December 27th, this Friday, like
Right.
you mentioned. Then what is this preliminary hearing? Walk us through what the hearing is and why is it an important one for Yoon even?
As a general matter, a pre-trial hearing or preliminary hearing is the occasion where the lawyers from both parties meet with the judge to basically streamline what's to come in the main trial. Things that are done during that time usually involve identifying the key issues of dispute and determining the scope of evidence and also the selection of witnesses. Together with fixing the schedule for the main trial. And so it is important as a general matter. And I think it's important for President Yoon in particular, because this would be an occasion for him to get a better sense from the other party, that is the prosecuting party, what their arguments will be against him. So it would be in his best interest to be part of the process.
Indeed. I mean, but the thing is, Yoon's legal team, they say the team is not done forming its members. The question is, what happens if they don't show up this Friday at the hearing? I mean, will they be held responsible for their absence?
Well, President Yoon's side would not be penalized, technically speaking, but in other senses, again, I think it would be in his best interest to be part of it. He has apparently formed the legal team for his criminal prosecution, but not so much for the impeachment part. So his, representative, unofficial, I suppose, spokesperson has indicated yesterday that the President Yoon takes the impeachment trial more important than the criminal prosecution part. But the legal team for the impeachment case has not been formed yet. As things stand now, very high likelihood that his team will not be present at the pretrial hearing this Friday. The court may proceed without holding pretrial hearing at all, which was the case in the very first impeachment case against President Nominee. And in the second impeachment case against President Park Geun-hye, there were 3 rounds of pretrial hearing. And so it's up to the court whether to hold it, how many pretrial hearings the court would hold. And I think given what is at stake in this case, the court is very likely to want to have a pretrial hearing. And so if President Yoon's team doesn't show up this Friday, which is very likely, then the court will likely to fix another date for a pretrial hearing. If this continues, again, it's up to the court how the court will proceed. But I think, as Chief Justice indicated at the very outset of this case, the court intends on moving forward, quote, swiftly and fairly. I think that's the policy of the court.
So it wouldn't be a surprise if his legal team doesn't appear this Friday. Now, can Yoon's legal team take as much time as they want to complete the team members then?
I think the team may, or maybe the President Yoon's side may ask for an extension of time. And I think the court may be willing to work with the President's side on this matter. But again, a further delay would not be a very good idea. It would not be in the interest of the President Yoon's side at all. And it would be, once again, a great disservice to the whole process and great disservice to the whole country. Technically speaking, if President Yoon fails to put together his legal team, then the court may even appoint a public defender in order to move forward with the proceeding. And some constitutional scholars in Korea have actually suggested that. But again, it's up to the court to decide. And I think in the best interest of President Yoon, in terms of doing his service to the country, to have his legal team ready and to cooperate with the process.
Right. Well, we'll have to wait and see what actually does happen on Friday. Professor Baek, thank you so much for your time and your insight this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much, and have a good Christmas.
And despite heavy pressure from opposition parties, acting President and Prime Minister Han Duck-soo has decided to postpone the review of special counsel bills targeting President Yoon Suk Yeol and First Lady Kim Geun-hye. Kicking off a cabinet meeting on Tuesday, Han hinted that not enough discussions on the matter are taking place between lawmakers. Han also said ruling and opposition parties need to collaborate to navigate clashes between legal interpretation and political views, such as special counsel bills and constitutional court appointments. Han added that if the ruling and opposition parties fail to create a fair legal framework for the investigation, distrust and hatred in South Korea could deepen. But the bills can still be approved ahead of the next cabinet meeting on December 31st. The National Assembly's Special Committee on the Nomination of Constitutional Justice has just begun its hearing on the third and the last nominee, recommended by the Parliament to join the Constitutional Court of Korea this winter. The opposition lawmakers of the committee are questioning candidate Cho Han-chang, who was recommended by the ruling People Power Party. Now, the lawmakers aim to get Jo, along with the 2 other nominees who were questioned the day before, confirmed by the whole Assembly at a plenary session this Thursday. But there are strong objections from the ruling party, which argues that the nominees, even if confirmed by the Assembly, cannot be appointed by an acting president who does not hold the same authority as the president. And the political instability rooted in the abrupt martial law order has shaken up the consumer sentiment here in South Korea. Our Park Geun-hye has the details.
Consumer sentiment in South Korea is worsening amid the ongoing political turmoil. On Tuesday, the Bank of Korea released its composite consumer sentiment index for December, which showed a drop of over 12 points on month to 88.4. That's the largest drop since the 2008 financial crisis. A CCSI below 100 indicates a pessimistic view of consumer sentiment compared to the average of the past 2 decades. And key components of the index, including the current economic assessment and economic outlook, saw their steepest declines in recent years. An official from the central bank attributed the downturn to factors including the political crisis since the short-lived martial law order earlier this month, along with ongoing concerns of a slowdown in exports with the second Trump administration. The official added that any recovery in consumer sentiment will depend on how quickly the political uncertainty is tamed. The instability has also affected the $1 exchange rate that hit a 15-year high above 1,450 last Thursday, while the benchmark Kospi hit a 1-year low earlier this month. Amid these economic challenges, Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok on Monday made a gloomy forecast for the Korean economy next year, with growth in 2025 estimated to fall short of the Bank of Korea's potential growth estimate of 2%.
Given several downside risks, the economic growth outlook for next year will inevitably be downgraded and will likely fall slightly below the potential growth rate.
Also on Monday, during an economic ministerial meeting, Choi pledged to prioritize restoring people's livelihoods by fully mobilizing government resources. He shared plans to vitalize the domestic economy through policies for each sector, including tourism and construction. Choi added he'll do his best to ease the burden on households by addressing essential living costs, including food and housing. Further details are set to be announced early next week. Park Gun-woo, Arirang News.
Amid expectations that the U.S. Federal Reserve will ease the pace of interest rate cuts next year, the U.S. 10-year Treasury bond yield has continued to rise. According to a U.S. financial website, MarketWatch, the U.S. 10-year Treasury bond yield rose 7.6 basis points from the previous trading session on the New York Stock Exchange to close at 4.595% as of 3:33 p.m. Monday. At one point during Monday's trading session, the yield surpassed 4.6%. That's the first time it has exceeded the figure since June. Now, the Bloomberg noted that investors are expecting the pace of interest rate cuts to slow and are raising the possibility of worsening U.S. fiscal soundness under the incoming Trump administration. The Kremlin says it's likely that North Korean troops will participate in next year's Victory Day in Moscow. The comments also come as U.S. intelligence says it was Pyongyang that offered to deploy troops to Russia, with Moscow not requesting military assistance first. Our Lee Seung-ja has more.
Russian foreign policy advisor Yuri Yushakov said Monday that he believes North Korean troops would most likely participate in next year's Victory Day parade on Moscow's Red Square. According to Russia's Sputnik news agency, military contingents from several countries will participate in the 80th anniversary of Victory Day, when Russians commemorate the Soviets' World War II victory over Nazi Germany in 1945. Russia's defense ministry also said last month that its defense chief invited the North Korean military to take part in the Victory Day parade during his visit to Pyongyang. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky said Monday that more than 3,000 North Korean soldiers are believed to have been killed or injured since being deployed to the Kursk region to fight alongside the Russian military. Zelensky made the comments on Telegram following a briefing by his top military commander. The Ukrainian leader added that North Korea is likely to send more soldiers and military equipment to Russia and vowed tangible response measures to such actions. And a recently released New York Times report says U.S. intelligence believes that North Korea offered to deploy North Korean troops to Russia without Moscow requesting the military assistance. This contrasts with Western officials who initially saw the North Korean troop deployment as a sign that Russia was desperate for a troop reinforcement. The newspaper article says while it believes it was the North's idea to send troops, Russian President Vladimir Putin quickly embraced it. The report also says that U.S. officials believe Pyongyang has not yet received anything from Moscow in response to its assistance. However, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is hoping that Russia will repay him in the future. Ukrainian and Western estimates say North Korea sent around 10,000 troops to the Kursk region to fight alongside the Russian military in a counteroffensive. Lee Seung-ja, Arirang News.
Now, let's take a look at the stories from around the world with our Kim Xiong. Good morning, Xiong.
Good morning, Dami.
So, Xiong, let's start with the latest in U.S. politics. Isn't U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's ally, Matt Gaetz, under fire.
Yes, that's right. A report into allegations against Gaetz, who was formerly nominated for Attorney General by Trump, was released on Monday. Now, the U.S. House Ethics Committee report says it found substantial evidence that the former Florida congressman paid tens of thousands of dollars for sex and drugs while in office. Citing the final draft of the Ethics Committee's report, CBS News reported that Gaetz paid over $90,000 to at least 12 different women, likely in connection with sexual activity and/or drug use, violating House rules and standards of conduct. The report also stated that a woman, referred to as Victim A, had sex with Gaetz twice at the age of 17 and was paid $400 by him. Now, Gaetz has repeatedly denied all wrongdoing. His lawyers had attempted to temporarily block the publication of the report, which they say contains untruthful and defamatory information on Gaetz. A day before the release of the ethics report, Gaetz spoke at Turning Point Conference alongside Trump, saying that he may run for a seat in the United States Senate. U.S. President Joe Biden on Monday commuted the sentences of 37 out of 40 federal inmates on death row, reducing their penalty to life in prison without parole. While Biden's measure does not include over 2,000 inmates convicted to death by state authorities, he has commuted almost all federal death row inmates. Only 3 are excluded: the Boston Marathon bomber and the Charleston African Methodist Church and Tree of Life synagogue shooters. Now, Biden's move comes just before President-elect Donald Trump's return to office. Trump restarted federal executions during his first time in office after no executions have been carried out for almost 20 years. Earlier in December, Biden issued 39 presidential pardons and commuted the sentences of some 1,500 people who were convicted of non-violent crimes. Japanese automakers Honda and Nissan announced on Monday that they have formally agreed to hold talks on a possible merger. Such a deal would create the world's third largest automobile group by vehicle sales, following Toyota and Volkswagen. The talks are also set to include Japanese car manufacturer Mitsubishi, which is already in alliance with Nissan. Nissan CEO Makoto Uchida said the potential merger would allow accomplishments that neither company could achieve alone. Now, Honda CEO Toshihiro Mibe underlined a growing competition with the rise of Chinese power and emerging forces, saying that they would like to lead the world once again. The two Japanese car makers said that they aim to finish the talks by mid-2025 and, if successful, would set up a holding company by August 2026. Santa Claus has departed on his reindeer-driven sleigh from his home in the Arctic Circle. Santa greeted the crowd that gathered on Monday at the Santa Claus village in Rovaniemi, northern Finland, before setting off to deliver Christmas joy around the world. The Santa Claus village, which attracts more than 500,000 annual visitors, was created in 1985 to provide an all-year-round Christmas experience.
The deep freeze continues on Christmas Eve, with cold wave alerts remaining in place for much of the northern parts of South Korea. Central and inner regions are seeing morning temperatures dropping below -10 degrees Celsius. Pyeongchang woke up to a low below -16 degrees Celsius. Meanwhile, afternoon highs will also be lower than yesterday, so do bundle up tightly for any outdoor plans you have today. But Christmas Day will be warmer than Christmas Eve. Dry air, however, continues in East Coast regions, and strong winds and dry air mean the risk of wildfire is very high. Afternoon temperatures will be 1 to 4 degrees lower than yesterday, topping out at just 3 degrees in the capital, Daegu at 8 degrees. But sunny skies expected nationwide all day today. But it's going to be rather cloudy on Christmas Day in most places, with snow flurries in the forecast in mountainous regions on Jeju and Gangwon-do that night. Then things will get bitterly cold again from Thursday afternoon through to Sunday. Well, that's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That's all we have for this morning. We'll be back on Thursday at the same time, 10 a.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.